All right, folks, it looks like we've got 2:30 on the dot, so we are going to start this party. Welcome, everyone, to ANJEE's 38th annual conference. We are virtual again this year, but we are very excited to see all of you. My name is Erin Rounds, and I'm the co-president of ANJEE. Also with me today is ANJEE board member Stephanie Singer. Stephanie will be taking care of our chat and admitting people and all of that great stuff along the way. We're excited that you can join us for today's workshop, Hands-on Ecology, Education for a World of 8 Billion, as part of our conference this year. Special thanks to our conference sponsors, the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, an anonymous donor who is a friend of science and environmental education in New Jersey, and the Institute for Natural History Arts. We also like to thank our keynote sponsor, Nigerian Associates, our award sponsor, Duke Farms, and BASF for supporting our field experiences. We'll be placing a link to our YouTube channel in the chat room, so you can see any recorded content we have from past conferences, forums, and other sponsored events. And in the coming weeks, you'll be able to view all of the workshops from this conference. Please subscribe so you get notifications when all those great things go up. Just a few reminders for the session. We ask everyone keep themselves on mute throughout the presentation. If you do have any questions or comments, please put them in the chat. We'll also have time for live questions at the end. There will be, excuse me, time for the live questions at the end. You can raise your hand or use the hand raising icon, and we will answer any of your questions. Today we have with us Laura Short from Population Education, who'll be our presenter this afternoon. During this session, we'll discover interdisciplinary role-playing games and group collaboration to explore human environmental interactions, impacts on fragile ecosystems, and paths to sustainability. Engage with the lessons and use the digital tools to simulate the in-person experience for the classroom and nature center. Laura, please introduce yourself and let's get started.
Hi, everyone. I am so excited to be here. I think I recognize a couple names. I am Laura Short. I am from an organization called Population Education, which is based in DC. But I got my start in environmental education in 2002 up in New England, working for Nature's Classroom. So shout out if anybody has any ties to that organization. I love working with environmental educators who are just such a fun and creative group of teachers who are thinking really outside of the box to inspire students to be citizens that are aware and thinking about their place in a sustainable future. And that's why I work with Pop Ed as well. So I have brought with me today a handful of lessons from population education that I think might be useful for an environmental education context. When thinking about sustainability, of course, human impacts on the environment, all of these things we care so much about, and adding in the lens of population, because the number of people on our planet is a big kind of elephant in the room when it comes to talking about sustainability for our future. And that's what I want to bring into the conversation. I have a question up on the slide right now. And if you wanted to take a moment to introduce yourself, it's always nice to hear who is in the room. I've asked if you wanted to put your name, your organization that you're here representing, or if you're just here on your own as an interested educator, that's perfectly fine too. And because we're all nature nerds, if there is a favorite nature thing that you love to introduce to your students. For me, it is always salamanders. I always love salamanders of any type and form. That is by far my favorite thing to share with kids in the woods, or at least the Massachusetts woods. It might vary if I went back to my hometown in Texas. So while we do that, take a moment, intro yourself so we know who's here. We are going to be working together. I am going to be asking folks to unmute. I will be asking you to play along. My goal has been to bring some lessons and activity from our curriculum that I can share with you, give you a sense of how they would work in the field through using digital adaptations, digital games, digital modifications, which may or may not be useful in your own programs if you are working in virtual spaces. And then also for those of you in person, you'll get hopefully a sense of how these activities would work with students and how you might incorporate them into your own program. Oh, this is great. It's good to hear from y'all. Perfect. Yay. Okay, let me jump into it. A little bit of introduction, and then we'll spend most of the time today playing. Last November, the United Nations estimated that we hit a huge population milestone of 8 billion people on our planet, which is a massive number to even wrap your brain around and think about what those implications are for our ecosystems. And so our organization's goal is to create resources for educators, for informal educators, classroom teachers, for anybody teaching about sustainability to incorporate talking about population, which can be a loaded conversation, with students in a way that's age appropriate and meaningful and informs their thinking about a sustainable future. So with that in mind, our resources cover a broad range of topics. Today, I'm focusing on human impacts on the environment and also thinking about ecosystem and ecosystem functions. So that's where we're focusing today, but we have a lot of resources for a lot of other topics as well that I encourage you to explore. At the end of today, I will be leaving you with lesson plans and other curricular supports for using everything that I share with you today with your own students, but also for several dozen other lessons and activities that you can do with kids as well. So the goal is to bolster your toolbox in a lot of different ways in order to incorporate thinking about population into conversations about sustainability. All right, with that in mind, I brought a handful of lessons. I want to jump right into probably everybody at their center has some sort of predator-prey simulation game. So I want to start with population education's simulation. This is called Panther Hunt. So for this particular activity, take off whatever hat you're wearing right now and put on your panther ears. We're going to be hopping into an ecosystem that has 5 different prey animals. Yay, Aaron, for the props in the chat. So as a panther, you're going to be looking to survive. We have squirrels, we have rabbits, we have porcupines, we have beaver, we have deer, all on the menu. Now, we are all in a virtual space and we are all very good at playing predator-prey simulations in person. So let me introduce you to our version of a digital game board for Panther Hunt. So there is a link in the chat. If you are joining today from a device that can access Google Slides, then I'll invite you to click on the link. If you're joining from an iPhone where you can't do both Zoom and Google stuff, that's perfectly fine. I'll share screens so that y'all can follow along and at least see the action and get a sense of how it all goes and get a sense of how it might work with your students as well. So everybody who's able to click on that link and join me over in Google Slides so we can play a round of Panther Hunt together. All right, I'm gauging. I have a couple different game boards for different size groups, so I'm kind of getting a sense of how many folks. All right, I see 8+ currently. Why don't we all head to slide number 4? So slide number 4 has game space for 20 panthers, and I think that should be sufficient for us today. So if you are able to get into the file, go ahead and head to slide number 4. And once you're on slide number 4, you're going to see all these colorful squares. These are our panther dens. So go ahead and claim one of these panther dens for yourself. And in order to do that, just double click where it says name and type your own name into the box. That'll make it your box, your space, your den where you're going to be gathering your prey. So go ahead and do that now. I don't see anybody doing that, which makes me really nervous that I messed up my links. It's view only. Thank you for chatting. I thought I caught all of that. Let me update this. All right, give it a try now. That means that I probably did that to all the other ones. So let me just take a really quick moment and double check. Yep, I did that. This is what happens when it's your first presentation of the new year. You're like, I don't remember how Zoom works. Yes, excellent. All right, here come our panthers. We're on slide number 4. So if you are in the deck, the Panther Hunt deck, we are in slide number 4. Thank you, Benjamin, for pointing that out. Thank you, Jem, for pointing out, yes, if you had already opened the file, you might have to actually open it again. So you might have to go back to your Zoom window, find the chat, and click on that link again in the chat In fact, I'll go ahead and paste it one more time, if that's helpful. And then you can join us over on the hunting field. All right, we're getting a handful of folks here. All right, we're using a new tool since we're using this Google slide as a game board. And I want to make sure everybody is able to use the tools before we begin the simulation. So you'll notice that in your panther den is an S and a circle. This little circle represents a squirrel, and it's one of the animals that we will be hunting today. In order to use this digital tool, if you could start us off by practicing moving your squirrel around the screen. So click on your little S, slide it around, and when you're satisfied that you're capable of moving graphics around a Google slide screen, go ahead and put it in that gray area to the right. That's going to be our hunting field. I see there's one person on slide 5. If you want to join us on slide 4, that's where all the action is going to happen. And we do have some couple extra spots there. Oh, that's hilarious. If you accidentally resize your squirrel, I will happily laugh at you. And also, you can undo it in the menu bar all the way over to the left-hand side. There's a back arrow. That's your undo. And if you want to do that, that's an easy way of getting it back to the right size. In order to make sure you move it correctly, you want to hover until you get a 4-way arrow. If you only have a 2-way arrow, then you end up resizing instead. Okay, it looks like we're mostly successful. Way to go, everybody born in the technological age. I'm going to go ahead and move these unclaimed squirrels into our hunting zone, and let's go over the boundaries of our simulation before we play. So in a moment, I'm going to invite everybody to start hunting, and you're going to gather whatever prey you can, move it into your box, and that's going to be your dinner for this hunting season. Now, while you do that, just keep in mind that in order to survive this hunting season, you are going to need 50 kilograms of meat in your den. Think about your different animals. Different animals are different sizes. I make it hard to tell which animals are what size. That's on purpose because I like making things more difficult. You are only allowed to carry one animal at a time because as a panther, you only have one mouth. So let's not get too greedy, my friends. Whoever is being sneaky pants getting started, I did not say go yet. All right, let's see here. Please be kind and polite, panthers, and not take food from other people's dens. You may only collect food from the hunting field. And let me just double check. I think those are the most important rules. We also have them here in the speaker notes at the bottom of the slide. Yep, I think that's pretty much it. All right, let's give this a go. On your mark, get set, hunt. Let's see what kind of food we're able to gather. So this is where, you know, like awkward silence on my end. If I have a small group, I love asking folks to unmute and to rib each other. Well, good job, squirrel hunter, stretching it out. Oh, perfect. Oh man, Bailey, I see you covering your den with all the stuff. Excellent, excellent, excellent. For those of you who've just popped in the last couple minutes, we're playing a game on this file that's in the links. And if you want to join us, it's not too late. You can certainly join in. We've got a round 2 coming up. Ooh, resizing. Doesn't matter how big it is, as long as you have it. Ooh, okay. I'm going to go ahead and say stop. I see some things moving around the screen. You may be frustrated because you think somebody stole something from you. It might be that they did. That's entirely possible. Or it might just be that Google is confusing and does that to us. What I need us to do right now is see if you have gathered enough prey to survive. And in order to do so, let me get a key up on the right. So what I'll invite you to do right now is take a moment. If you need to organize the prey that you have in your den, go ahead and do so. And do some fuzzy math. It doesn't have to be exact math. Fuzzy is perfectly fine for these purposes and considering our time. And see how much prey you were able to gather. Once you have calculated your total amount of prey, so how much meat were you able to get into your den, go ahead and type that total next to your name in the top. And I see some of you don't have a name in the top. We can just insert new text boxes there. That'll work out just fine. And then you'll have something that you can use. So that we can tell who was able to survive and who was not able to survive. So here, I'm going to put some extra text boxes out if that helps, folks. Ooh, yeah. Oh, snarky comments are 100% encouraged if you need to type those in next to your name as well. I wholeheartedly agree with snark. Yes, Samuel. We need 23 pounds. Wah, wah. Stephanie, just barely over the border, 54.5 kilograms. I said pounds before, didn't I? It's all in kilograms. Metric. It's how the world works, isn't it? Let's see. Who else? How are we doing? Cameron, just over the limit with 55 as well. Oh, Sam T, happy greedy person over there, 122 kilograms. Pretty impressive. Kimberly gets a big wah, wah, as does Denise on the bottom row. Jim with 145.5 kilograms. Oh, Jim. Caroline is over 100 as well. Person in the yellow box with 101. Oh my goodness. Hungry. That's right, Jim. Absolutely. Perfect. All right. It looks like almost everybody has had a chance to do their total. Now, I want you to imagine while we are doing the math here, in person, clearly we're not using graphics on a screen. We use props for this one. So in person, the lesson plan that I'll share with you has students using individual cups that have these initials written on them to represent the different animals. For the field, I personally like using poker chips, which is a little more durable and fit more easily in my backpack and are brightly colored and don't blow away in the wind. But it'll be set up much the same way. So you'll have a designated hunting area. You'll have individual props that have individual animals on them. You'll scatter them through your hunting area, and you'll give students a limited amount of time to gather what they can. Your hunting area can be a section of woods with clear boundaries. It can be your classroom. I have seen teachers do this with cups on every literal horizontal surface in their classroom. It can be a gymnasium or cafeteria, whatever you have access to. All right, it looks like most people have been able to add their things up. It looks like some people weren't quite able to use the graphics. That's perfectly fine. I think we're still going to get a sense of how this whole activity works. Whoever is here in purple, I'm going to move your things over because Ben, 49 kilograms. So close. All right, so we have figured out now how many Panthers have survived. We have Cameron, Caroline, Tom, we have Stephanie, we have Sam, Jim, and Bailey, and Steven. So we have 8 Panthers out of this ecosystem were able to survive. Erin, I see your question. I'll get to it in just a second. At this point, I want to introduce a concept to the group. And that concept is carrying capacity. So our carrying capacity is the amount of resources available. Well, no, actually, let me back up. It's the number of Panthers that can survive in this particular ecosystem based on the resources that are available in this ecosystem. In this case, it's really easy to make some black and white boundaries and say our ecosystem is this slide. The resources available are the prey that were in the hunting zone. Our carrying capacity is the number of Panthers that are able to survive in this ecosystem based on the prey that's here. So, quick question, feel free to unmute and shout it out or to put it in the chat. What is the carrying capacity for Panthers on this slide in this ecosystem? Anybody have a total for us? 8. Ben's guessing 8 because we had 8 Panthers survive this round. Anybody have any other thoughts? Want to challenge Ben and Erin on carrying capacity equals 8 for this ecosystem? Feel free to unmute as well if you've got a thought. You want to just shout it out there. We're a small enough group. Stephanie agrees with Ben and Erin. Perfect. Any other thoughts? Even from folks who weren't able to get into the file and play along with us, hesitantly agree. Jim, way to read the room. Samantha, maybe 10 if we weren't all greedy. Aaron, is the total prey divided by 50? Stephanie, I said Stephanie, it's Samantha. Samantha, you have hit the nail on the head. If we were a bunch of scientists talking carrying capacity in a hypothetical sense about panthers in this hypothetical ecosystem, then we might want to note that in this particular simulation, we had a couple incredibly greedy panthers, namely Jim, I'm looking at you, and had their prey been distributed more evenly between all of the panthers in this ecosystem, we might have been able to have more panthers survive. So our carrying capacity isn't how many panthers survived, it's how many panthers could survive in the ecosystem given the amount of prey here, in which case Aaron is absolutely 100% correct that what we'd want to do is add up all the total prey and divide by 50. So carrying capacity is a super important concept for our AP environmental science at the high school level. It's a super interesting concept for our middle school students if we're doing ecology with them in the field. And it's a super important concept when it comes to people as well. So thinking about the implications of carrying capacity, is there a carrying capacity for people on our planet? If so, how would we go about calculating that? It's a super challenging exercise. Disclaimer, there is no answer for it, but it's an interesting one to think about because after all, people are just another animal in an ecosystem, and carrying a capacity applies to panthers just as much as it applies to people. Now, this simulation, we've just done round one of it, and if you're working in person with students, we're typically talking about 20-ish minutes, but there is a part two to this lesson because so far, what we've done is we've modeled kind of this very simple but natural ecosystem, and we want to add the impacts of people into the simulation. So what I've actually done is I've made a second copy of our game boards down at the very end of the deck. And if you want to join me on slide 9 for a second, it's a reset version of what we've just done. And what I'd love to do is invite folks to shout out, either unmute or in the chat, what is an example of a human impact on a panther's environment? What are some ways that people can alter a panther's environment in a way that might change the carrying capacity? And while you shout that out, I want you to also think about how do you think that how do you think that human action will impact carrying capacity for panthers in this particular habitat? So Stephen said habitat loss. What do you think that'll do to carrying capacity? Urban sprawl, development, hunting, deforestation, man-made fire. Perfect. I'm going to take one of these and just very quickly, I'm not actually going to run the whole round 2, but just to give you an idea. The second part of this lesson invites students to brainstorm ways that they can incorporate a human impact into the simulation. Because we don't just want students learning about ecosystem function, we want them to be like gods of the simulation and to think about how they can manipulate and change it, because ultimately we want them to have the God powers of good for the future of our planet. So let's do it right now. Some of you mentioned a couple of really great human impacts. How might you alter this game board, change the rules of this game in order to incorporate or model your particular human impact? So Stephanie says, break up the territories of large predators. I'm wondering if you can think about how you might model that in this simulation. That would be awesome. How might you model hunting or development or urban sprawl or habitat loss? Some of these really great and important suggestions in the chat. Cut the number of prey animals in half. Perfect. So maybe that could be a model for, what was cut the number of prey? That was Bailey. Bailey, did you have development? So if you human development, move in, and maybe that means that we've lost space in our hunting ground. And so we basically delete prey that we're occupying that part of our hunting ground. Perfect, Bailey. Let's see, have a tiny section with one panther for the participants to fight over. Ooh, interesting, Stephanie. Love to see that one in real life to see how that goes with our students. Tom, let's see, limit where certain panthers can hunt. Perfect. I love that one, Tom, in particular, for if we're talking about defragmentation. Wait, fragmentation, do they mean the same thing? So for example, if we build a highway through the middle of our game board, and maybe what it looks like is literally, I hate it when my 6-year-old uses that, drawing a giant line through the center of the game board, and then panthers cannot cross the line in order to hunt for their prey. And so we can see that impact on carrying capacity. So these are really, really great. This is a perfect example of what we want our students to doing. So thinking critically about human impacts, thinking about specific ways that those impacts might impact one specific ecosystem, and then thinking about ways to model it so they can explore this bigger idea of carrying capacity and human impacts on ecological carrying capacity. Ooh, I think we have a good idea of it. Just a side note, I'll make sure you have access not only to the lesson plans for these activities, but also to clean versions of these digital adaptations. So if you are working in virtual spaces and want to play with these, you are certainly welcome to. I do want to open it up for questions. Does anybody have any comments, questions, thoughts, ideas? And while we do that, I'm going to hop back over to the slideshow and just make sure I told you everything about this lesson that I wanted to tell you about it. Anybody have any thoughts? Well, good. Well, I hope everybody is warmed up and excited to play a little bit more, because I brought a couple more kind of gamey things to play around with. So this first activity, I wanted to lead with something that was super obviously environmental ed. So we're very familiar with predator-prey simulations. I wanted to show you what our version is and how we can incorporate carrying capacity. Thank you, Stephanie. We worked really hard when the pandemic started to see if we could mimic the learning experience in virtual spaces. And if any of you are like nerds on how to like digitize game boards and want to chat with me later or send me an email later, I love talking about that kind of stuff. I would love to shift us a little bit to focus more on human impacts and look at one specific resource. So this next activity is called Mining for Chocolate. And for this activity, we are going to be thinking specifically about mining operations. We use a ton of resources that are mined out of the ground. The first part of the lesson includes this matching activity. We're not going to focus here. We're going to focus on the interactive part and coming up in just a little bit. But thinking about all of the things in our day-to-day life that come from the ground, for example, my computer and the wires and the metals inside of it come from the ground. And life for me would not be possible day-to-day without some of these really important resources. Now, those resources have an impact. And so for this next activity, we're going to be modeling the impact of the mining operation. Traditionally, in person, we use chocolate chip cookies because, of course, throwing in chocolate chip cookies is going to be a hit. We do have an awesome virtual version, which I'm going to be sharing next. So this is an individual activity. And if you are not able to get into this next file, you can certainly lurk on my screen and watch how other folks are doing it. This is, again, a Google Slide file, and I do recognize that Google Slides is not universally accessible. However, I'm hoping this will give us enough of a sense of what this looks like in person that you'll be inspired to check the activity out yourself later in the lesson plan. So for this particular activity, if you could join me on slide number 3. I'll give you a little bit of an intro to what we're going to be doing, and then I'll give you a little bit of time to try it out on your own. So for this activity, I want you to imagine you're each going to be given a map. And this map is very hypothetical, very generalized. It's going to have some features on it. There may be some habitats, some watersheds, some species locations. And you, as a developer, are going to decide where on this map you're going to place your mine. Your mine is going to be represented by a chocolate chip cookie. And inside your chocolate chip cookie, those chocolate chips are going to represent whatever valuable mineral you're trying to extract from the surface of our Earth. So the very first thing you're going to need to do, and I'm going to head down to slide number 4 to demonstrate this. And if folks are having challenges doing this on their own later, I'll be happy to go over this up a couple more times, because this is kind of the critical digital skill that you'll need in order to engage with this virtual activity. So the first thing you're going to have to do is place your cookie somewhere on the map. So in order to place the cookie is made up of a ton of these teeny tiny little graphics. And what you're going to have to do is draw a box around the outside edges of the cookie. So what I like to do is use my arrow cursor and trace a box around this red dashed box. And once I do that, it'll highlight everything in my cookie. Once I have it highlighted, I can click and drag my cookie anywhere on the screen that I want. So I can put it here on the map, or I can put it on top of the instructions to be annoying, or I can put it right here on top of this beautiful vista, or wherever I'd like it. So I'll decide where I want my mining operation to go, and I will place my mine right there on the map. So that's the first critical skill you'll need. So just a quick recap, I'll click on my arrow button in the menu bar. I will trace the red dashed box outline from one corner to the other. And when I let go of my mouse, everything in my cookie should be highlighted, and then I'll be able to click and drag it where I need on the screen. Hopefully, fingers crossed. Now, head down to slide number 5. Your cookie is made up of a ton of individual cookie crumbs. And in order to mine, you're going to have to pull the cookie crumbs out of the way to get to those delicious chocolate chips. So if you want to practice that, you are certainly welcome to do so on slide number 5, where you grab cookie crumbs and move them out of the way in order to try to find some of the chocolate chip cookies that may be buried underneath. Or in the case of this particular graphic, there's actually not any chocolate chip cookies, disclaimer, there's a big yellow smiley face underneath. So it looks like we're all pros at the digital stuff, so good times, everybody. So head on down to slide number 6. In slide number 6, you can claim a cookie mine for yourself. So this is going to be an individual project. Go ahead and type your name in one of the boxes. That's going to be where your mine is located. If you click on that number in front of your name, it'll pop you straight to your slide. And if you want, you can go ahead and start mining your cookie. So your goals again, decide where on the map you want to place your mining operation. Move your cookie into that location. Once you've moved it there, you're going to want to move the crumbs out of the way in order to find the delicious chocolate chip nuggets of gold or graphite or whatever mineral we're mining for today. As you disassemble your cookie, as you dive into your mining operation, those cookie crumbs are going to scatter because you have to move them out of the way. The cookie crumbs have to stay on the map where they land. So if you pull a cookie crumb out of the way in order to get to a chocolate chip, leave it exactly where it falls. Your chocolate chips, you can go gather in one spot. I like to put my chocolate chips back into the red dash box once your cookie's on the map. And that way I can count up how many nuggets I have been able to extract from my mining operation. Whew, that was a lot of instruction with also a lot of kind of detailed digital skill wrapped up in it. So some of you are probably like millennial pros and already on it and mining away. Go ahead, find your mine, find your slide, highlight your cookie, the whole cookie, move it onto your map. That's your first task. Take your whole cookie, move it onto your map, because that's where your mining operation is going to be. That's where your mining operation starts. And then once your cookie is on your map, then you can start trying to extract those chocolate chips. If you have a question, Tom, you can put crumbs wherever you need to in order to get to those chips. That's sort of, we're all environmental educators, so we probably all get where this is going. Not all science teachers or social studies teachers might necessarily see the outcome, but I bet y'all will. So Tom, just dig wherever you like. Crumbs go scattering everywhere. Imagine you're a 5th grader doing this. You have an actual chocolate chip in front of you. Imagine what's going to be happening with those crumbs. And crumbs everywhere, and then put those chips as you gather them back into the red dash box so we can count them up later and see how many chips you were able to get. So we'll just give folks a couple of minutes just to get a taste of this particular activity. As we do so, from my facilitator view, I'm going to kind of like browse through. Ooh, whoever is on slide 12, Tom, excellent. Well played. This is exactly what it looks like in real life. Tom's on slide 12. If anybody's curious how mining operations are going, or slide 14, Samantha. Yes, absolutely. Samantha's already gathered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 chocolate nuggets in her box. This is exactly what it looks like with our students. I also, just for the record, love doing this in person because it's a real insight into the personality of the kids that you're working with. You have some folks who are very detailed and controlled, and some folks whose cookies scatter on command. And you have some folks who are just everywhere in the spectrum in between. And it's super interesting finding it out. So let's just take maybe about 1 more minute to see how many chips you can gather in place. In the meantime, I'm gonna lurk and see how folks are doing on various slides. All the chips, Caroline. Ooh, I don't know which slide you're on. I'm going to go check out your cookie now. Okay, let me go to slide 6, and then Caroline is on slide 18. Let me pop over to slide 18. Oh, Caroline, did you dig deeper though? I bet you there are layers. Full disclosure, in person, I use Chips Ahoy chocolate chip cookies, and on average, there tend to be about 35-ish chips per cookie, surprisingly. I tried to match that in this particular digital manifestation, so you might find that there are more cookies buried underneath those crumbs. All right, you have 30 seconds. That's how much time you have left to gather any remaining chips. Okay. Fancy jacket with wings. Okay, great. Cameron, nice work. I see how organized your chips are. I know exactly what kind of student you might be in a classroom. I shouldn't say exactly. We've only met digitally. Oh, Jim. Well played, Jim. I see your chocolate chips gathering up in your slide on slide 29. All right, 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, crumbs down. Put your mining implements to the side. You are no longer allowed to mine any more chocolate chips out of your cookie. Now we can, of course, go for a little scroll through the gallery to see how folks are doing. There are quite a few different strategies involved here. So I have Lainey, who is digging straight into the center of the cookie and uncovering layer by layer. Lainey's on slide 7 for those of you who are checking this out. Ooh, you know what I'm going to have folks do? If you take a moment right now, count up how many chips you were able to get and type it next to your name on the top of your mining slide where it says name. I am curious who was able to get the most number of chips out of your cookie. And I want to take a look at your mining operation. So if you think you have the most number of chips, go ahead and type it next to your name. You can type it next to your name on your mining slide, or if you want to type it next to your name on slide 6, and we can see everybody. Actually, let's do that. Let's go to slide 6. So that way we can see everybody's total. So I see on slide 6, Aaron has typed in that Aaron has 12 chocolate chips. Tom has 21. Uh-oh, Kimberly has 25. Well played, Kimberly. That's our leader right now on the leaderboard. Tom, 17. Lainey, 16. Bailey with 31 chips. Impressed, maybe. It's fuzzy math. I get that. That's fine. Ben with 15. It's respectable. Caroline, 9. Interesting. Samantha, 21. Let's see. Okay. We're going to do a little bit of a tour. Now, I have no idea what all of these look like. I know I've been browsing a little bit, but let's take a quick peek. I want to see Bailey and Kimberly's slides because they both have quite a few chips that they're able to gather. So let's, I love the running commentary in Google. Well played, everybody. All right, Bailey, let's go to slide 23. We're going to take a look at your mining operation. All right, here we have Bailey's mining operation. We see a massive amount of chips in the square. Yes, typical.
Oh, they have to be in the square. Okay.
What was that?
I didn't put them in the square. I
It
left them in the
totally
circle.
doesn't matter. You can gather your chips wherever you like on the screen. I'm one of those people that loves boxes and lining things up. So I would put, much like, for example, Cameron is. Cameron, I'm on your slide right now. Slide 27. Cameron has noted with 12 chips that they are the cleanest mining operation. I will certainly say that their chips are most neatly organized, but would you say that Cameron's mining operation was the cleanest mining operation? I'm going to put that up for debate for the group.
No,
Anybody have any thoughts?
no, because it's spread out over the board.
Oh, yes, Tom, you're right. Also, Bailey, I see that you went for speed. I'm curious to compare Cameron's with 12 cleanest operation sad face with Bailey's. And Bailey, where was yours again? Let me just double check your slide number. Bailey was on slide 23. So Bailey was going for speed. We see the scatter pattern. Who thinks they have the messiest mining operation? Oh, I think I know. Who's on slide 21? Let's see. I'm going to check that name. Slide Samuel. Wait, you got 0 chips? I feel like, Samuel, you are making a statement. Are you able to unmute and tell us a little bit about your mining strategy, what you're going for here? You might not be able to unmute. I totally get that. That's perfectly fine. If you'd rather type, that's interesting as well. Well, let me put this out here to the group. We now have all of these mining operations on these maps, and we have gathered quite a bit of chips. I'm going to scroll down here to slide 24 and look at this nice, lovely collection of chips mined out of the Earth's surface. And as we can see, because we're all environmental educators, there is going to be an impact for this mining operation. So who can tell me about some of the impacts of their mining operation? You can be as creative and detailed or broad stroke or narrow as you like. What were some of the impacts of your own particular mining operation? How would you describe the impacts of your mining operation? And if you want to like unmute and pop out and let us know what slide it is, we can also visualize that. I can go to that slide so we can all see.
A concentrated pollution spot, slide 38.
Slide 38. So Tom, is that Tom? I think I remember your
Yes.
voice. Look at that. That is a personality right there, Tom. Look at that super concentrated collection of crumbs all in one corner. Now you put them all in one spot, Tom. Are they all going to stay there?
Hadn't gotten that far.
Do you notice what resources your crumbs are covering?
It was an empty square, but I'm near the water.
Yeah. So what's going to happen with that water and those crumbs that are in the water?
Runoff effect, pollution down the stream.
Absolutely. I'm sorry to put you on the spot, Tom, for that. Kimberly also
I
nailed
do
it.
this activity.
Perfect. Yeah. So Kimberly noted it as well. Lots of water pollution. Absolutely. Stephanie, there's not enough blank space for the debris. Absolutely. For some students, this is, they haven't often had the chance to think about really specific consequences of really specific actions. And this is one way to kind of do it. What I find really intriguing and interesting about this particular lesson, however, is that really this lesson's about opportunity costs. So on one hand, we have environmental impacts from our mining operation. On the other hand, I have a functioning computer that I can use to join you today, to share ideas, to earn my livelihood, to function effectively in our society. So this provides us a lesson for thinking through opportunity costs of human actions, because it's not just about how we're impacting the environment, it's the trade-offs between like our quality of life and our community building and our impacts on the environment. So for example, well, actually, let me put it out there to everybody. Did anybody think about impacts while they were mining their chocolate chips? If you did, what was the thinking that went on in your head? How did you make your choice for your strategy for mining? Anybody want to unmute and jump out and answer that? Was anybody thinking about impacts when they were mining their chocolate chips? And if so, how did they think about it? What conclusion did they come to?
I didn't. Because realistically, I don't think the people that would be doing this would.
Absolutely. So you put this kind of activity in front of a sixth grader, they are not going to think about it. Well, no, that's not true. You have a class of sixth graders, you'll have a couple that absolutely will think about it, but most of them will absolutely not. And of course, we live in a really capitalistic, economic driven society. So, I mean, that's not that unusual. So way to throw that out. Thank you for sharing that. Anybody else have any thoughts on it?
I've seen it where the kids start out very good, but once the cookie breaks, they give up and then just go after all the chips.
Yeah. Yep. Perfect. Soft cookies. You know, I really like using the hard cookies because I think they're a little bit harder, and although the debris field is more dramatic, I find, with the soft cookies. And as much as I love some good homemade chocolate chip cookies, Chips Ahoy brand, I hate to support a brand like this, but just like complete side note, it's not in the lesson plan. I enjoy them for this activity because they have a great debris spread that is really interesting for students. I'm working my way through the comments. I apologize if I missed somebody. Stephanie, really good point that this the impacts from this mining operation are not going to stay localized. They are going to go everywhere on this map, no matter how careful you are about placement of these crumbs. Stephen thought about it. Stephen, hey, I don't know if you're able to unmute. So you did not go for maximum chippage. Is that correct? Maybe Stephen's not able to unmute. Every now and then you get students who, when I frame this activity with students, I do not tell them that their goal is to get the maximum number of chips. I find that students will assume that all on their own, that it's immediately a competition and that's automatically their goal and they are just going for it. Stephen, you did something that very few students do, and that's like, think a little bit outside the facilitator instructions and think about what your goal is going to be. And in your case, you didn't want to go for all the chips. And so you left your cookie alone. Let me see if I can find your slide real quick. Let's see, Stephen, you were on slide. Oh, no, that's Stephanie. Uh-oh, where are you? Did you not take any chips, Stephen? Is that, am I right about that? Because that's, yeah, that's a powerful lesson too for kids to hear from each other. Yeah. Sometimes it's fun to kind of trick them with like the setup for an activity for a powerful punchline in the end. Oh, Stephen, you weren't being a kid as well. That's an important point as well. Although I have on very rare occasions seen kids take the same strategy as you. Power move. Yes, absolutely, Cameron. Excellent. So I think you have a pretty good idea of this particular lesson and some ideas of places where you can take it in conversation. Concepts you can weave into it, discussions that you can have with students around this particular activity. Anybody else want to throw out any other ideas or concepts that we can bring into this, or places where you could find it useful in your own curriculum or your own practice? Y'all are very polite with not derailing the lesson. I am debating, I brought 2 more activities and we're not gonna have time for both. And I'm debating which one I think will be the most fun for us. I think I know what we're gonna do. All right, and also there are a ton of really interesting lessons in the collection I'm gonna be sharing with you, and I 100% encourage you to explore it. And if there are questions after the fact that you have for me about these particular lessons or how you might use them, I I love chatting with educators and would love to chat with you. So please feel free to reach out to me afterwards. I have popped back over to my slide deck. We have just done a quick overview of this particular activity, mining, to get a sense of it. Some questions about opportunity cost. You can also ask students to add some math by calculating profit or calculating area of impact. I want to bring us to our last lesson, water, water everywhere. And again, this one has a fully in-person version of it, and I'm going to be sharing with you the fully digital version of it today because we're in this virtual space. So this lesson, we've been talking about ecosystems and human impacts on ecosystems. We've been talking about humans working with extracting a particular resource. I want to talk about one other particular resource that we tend to use. I'm shifting the conversation now from just numbers of people and our impact in the environment to our individual consumption and the potential for that to impact the environment. So for this last lesson called Water, Water Everywhere, we're going to be thinking about water, of course, and most importantly, fresh water. Because if we're following the news, we know what an important resource this is and how drastically our natural supplies of this are shifting and changing and what kinds of complications that's providing in communities and economies around the country and around the world. So two questions for us as we jump into this activity. One is, where is water located on Earth? So not all water is equal when it comes to what's useful for us. And so thinking about where we find water can be helpful for students. And then also how much is available for us to use. So I have one other document in the chat. In order to make this interactive in a virtual space, this one is not a slide. This one is a Google Sheet, which is a tool that I love to use if we're working with data. And this particular lesson does work with data, so I find it useful for this. So for Water, Water Everywhere, I'm going to have folks join us on the first tab. It's labeled Part 1, Global Water Distribution. So for Part 1, what we want to do is we want to actually show students where we can find water on the planet. And in person, I actually use a set of beakers and we pour water, we measure and pour it, and so that we have the kind of 3D visual and interactive, like tangible demonstration of this. In this virtual space, I'm just going to be using this virtual version. So you'll see this very first pie chart that we have, distribution of water on Earth. We have divided water into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 categories. Our largest category, of course, is our oceans. So our oceans are salt water. So though we can convert salt water to fresh water, that's a pretty energy intensive process. It isn't possible in all places on our planet. So largely, ocean water is not water that's super useful for us when it comes to drinking needs or agricultural needs. However, ocean is by far the largest chunk of water on our planet. The next biggest chunk is frozen water, so water that is trapped in polar ice caps and glaciers, on mountaintops, things along those lines, and permafrost as well. Next up, we have deep groundwater. So this is water found way below the surface of the Earth, and in most cases is really cost prohibitive for us to access. So if we're talking about a resource that people can use, the deep groundwater is significant in terms of the total amount of water on the Earth, but it's not super helpful for human life and supporting humans. Then we have this green category, which is other. Other is a little bit tricky. Anybody have it, because we're all sciencey nerds? Anybody know what other random places we might find water on Earth? Usually a group of random teachers can't guess this, but usually environmental educators can. So I'll put it to y'all. Does anybody have any thoughts? Atmosphere, yes, nailed it. Any other places? That's why I love this community. Y'all are so smart. Living things, that's the other big one. Cameron, perfect. Yes, so other encompasses water that can be tricky for kids to visualize because it is water that is suspended in our atmosphere. It's water that's inside living creatures, so inside our body, inside plants, things like that. That leaves us with accessible fresh water. So these are our lakes, our streams, our rivers. This is our shallow aquifers, water that we can access fairly easily. And as you can see on this chart, that's only about 0.3% of the water on our planet. Like 2D pie charts are not that impactful, certainly not in EE settings. So I highly recommend taking a look at the lesson plan and using the beakers and having the students pour out the water themselves, because it's 1,000 times more impactful that way. What I want to focus most of our time on, though, is part 2. I want to have a chance to look at our personal consumption. So what we have here in this sheet is a personal water calculator. And I'll invite y'all to do this as individuals. You can head over to any tab that you want. And I'm going to head over to tab 1 just to use it as a demo. The very first, it asks you to estimate how much water you think you use every day in gallons. And so where it says answer here, you can click on that and type in a number. Then if you want to play around, look for this column D, that says how often or how much time do I spend doing the following activities. So these are activities where we directly use water in our lives. The lesson does get at indirect water consumption, but I'll let y'all explore that on your own later, because this is the fun part. So feel free to hop around this table and experiment by putting different numbers in. Like, do you think you have a standard faucet at your house, or do you think you have a low flow faucet? How much time do you think you spend washing your hands every day, or washing dishes, or how many times do you think you flush the toilet? Feel free to be honest or not at all honest. And type numbers into column D. And as you type them in, this calculator will automatically calculate an estimate of your daily water consumption down here at the bottom. So I'll invite you to find your own tab and play around with that. Also, this link is active, so if you want to play around with it after the session, I know we're running up against time. I want to get you resources, but I do want to allow you to play with this, because our goal here is for students to think not just about human impacts on the environment, but also levels of consumption, because that's a really important part of this whole equation for sustainability. And water is something that we have personal control of, or at least direct water consumption is something that we have some control over. All right. While you're doing that, I'll let y'all go ahead and play with it. There's also a table at the bottom of personal water consumption tab where you can see totals and averages for your entire group. So that's kind of fun to play around with. I'm going to just leave the screen right here for a second while I get all of my other windows organized. Because what I need to do next is head over to some resources. I want you to walk out of here. Oops, let's close that for a second. I want you to walk out of here with access to all of these resources so that y'all can play around with this all on your own. And scrolling. Let me get to the right place. Okay, and start the slides. Go from the current slide. Perfect. I think maybe I did it. I don't know if I did. We're going to see what happens next. Nope, I didn't, but we're just going to run with it because that's how we are right now. Okay, so I think I'm back on my deck. Let me pop ahead. Ooh, talking about water, a fun lesson on sustainability. That's really cool. Okay, this is where I want to pause us. Just I know we're wrapping up. I know there is an evaluation link thrown in the chat for the conference. If you have extra time and you'd like to provide me specific feedback, both on the lessons and me as a presenter, I love hearing feedback. I love improving my own craft, so I certainly welcome it. There's, I think, 5 questions on it, and it's right there. Also, if you liked what you saw and you'd like to stay connected with our organization and our resources, there's a place to add your email and you can stay in touch. The resource I want to give you is an online library of lesson plans and student readings and case studies and a bunch of odds and ends. It's called Teaching Population. It's for grades K through 12. This is kind of our best of hands-on stuff. I'm going to give you a PDF in just a second that tells you how to get to this resource. It's normally behind a paywall, but the PDF has information on how you can access it for free. The PDF also has a couple links to some other resources our organization provides, one of which is a really cool 5-minute video that illustrates population change. I find it super powerful. It's usually the first resource that educators find of our organization, and then they dive in and find more stuff after that. It's a lot of fun to see. We also have a really fun student video competition if you're working with students in a longer term. So if you're in a classroom, for example. Other odds and ends to stay connected are all on this PDF, and you can find that PDF right here. So there's a QR code on your screen. I'm also going to put the link in the chat. So if you are on Zoom, this first link is going to be for all of the resources you need to recreate everything you've seen today, as well as a bunch of other lessons. So that's our Teaching Population Resource Library. That's the link that just went in. And then if you would like to leave me any feedback, I know there was a link in the chat earlier for the conference, but this is a link for providing feedback for me. And also if you want to stay in touch, a place to drop your email so you can stay in touch. So I'll leave these just for a second. If you're watching asynchronously, QR code that and be in touch. And then last but not least, my own email is right here. I love talking to educators, especially folks in this community. So please do feel free to reach out if you have questions, comments, concerns, anything. I'd love to hear from you. All right, thank you so much. I'm right on the dot.
Laura, that was awesome. What an amazing presentation. And thank you so much for being with us today and sharing such an amazing virtual presentation with so much more engaging activities than I've ever seen in a virtual presentation. So thank you very much. Yeah, that was awesome. And we appreciate your time here today. And thank you so much for all the wonderful work that you're doing. And a reminder to all of the participants that this presentation has been recorded. So if you need to see what we've talked about and regroup and any of the information that Laura had mentioned, you will be able to see this again posted on our YouTube page, which was in the chat room. A few reminders before we close the session out, since we are at the end of the time. The evaluation link was posted for this presentation. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel to see any presentations that you might not have been able to see live, and check out our in-person field experiences. Even if you signed up for the conference already, it's not too late to go back and sign up for a field trip if you haven't done so already. You have until 4 o'clock today to do that. And thanks again to the conference sponsors, Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, and our anonymous donor, the Institute for Natural History Arts. Thank you very much. And this has been a phenomenal presentation, Laura. I look forward to hearing from you again, and I'm sure everyone looks forward to chatting with you in the future as well.
It was a pleasure, everybody.